All right, welcome back to Nathan Sports Talk. My name is Nathan, and I'm talking sports, and we're on to officially episode 2 here of the podcast. Hopefully, everybody is having themselves a fantastic day today, and you're ready to hear some sports talk. We're going to be focusing a ton on the NFL today. Once again, kind of dominating the headlines. You got a lot of stuff going on. Of course, the NFL draft was last week. Had my mock draft come out. It was perfect on the first 6 picks. I don't think I nailed a single pick after that. So, wasn't the best mock draft of all time, but I sort of was in the area for a lot of these guys, except one guy, which we will talk about a ton today. So hopefully everybody is ready to listen in. Hopefully everybody is ready to learn a little bit more about some sports and my opinions on those sports. But without further ado, let's hop right into it. We're going to start off with the big story of the NFL draft. I'm sure you guys have heard 1,000 different opinions on this. Shedeur Sanders. So Shedeur Sanders, of course, Colorado's quarterback, son of the NFL Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, obviously supremely talented player. So, Shedeur, he's picked 5th round, 144 by the Cleveland Browns, and it's after the Cleveland Browns go out and select Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round, in which I did not see this coming. I thought Shedeur was going to get drafted. Still, I know he made it to day 3, and there was the thought, hey, our team's just going to pass on him because they don't want this type of problem, all that stuff. I thought there was no way that he was going to get passed up upon in the draft because even if, he's a free agent, he picks where he goes. So a team wants to have control of him. You're going to need a 4-year contract with him, I believe, in the 4 through 7 rounds. So there's definitely reason to draft him. I think if you want to take a swing on him, I didn't think he was going to go undrafted, but did not think he was going to the Browns, especially after they picked Dylan Gabriel and now have 5 quarterbacks to their roster: and Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Deshaun Watson, then the 2 rookies in Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. So the first thing is, how does Shedeur drop this far? Is it shocking? Now, is it shocking for him to drop to the 5th round? I think that's extremely shocking for the 5th round, but for him to drop out the first, I don't think was shocking because of obviously the ego and the character of Shedeur Sanders and how he presents himself. You had NFL GM saying this is the worst interview we've ever had, et cetera, essentially saying that he is not a professional. He's a really good player, but he's just not a professional, and especially at a position such as quarterback, you need that in the NFL where you have structure at the top of your team. Quarterback is the face of your franchise. You've got to be able to, trust him to be the right person, make the right decisions. And there was clearly some character issues with Shedeur Sanders. Now, whether you believe those are warranted or not, it comes along with it. Obviously, his father, Deion Sanders, which a lot of people are going to point to and say, hey, listen, he didn't help out the process. And he certainly did not. Basically saying, hey, we're going to dictate where Shedeur goes, sort of how guys like Eli Manning, John Elway, and even Caleb Williams to some extent did in the past. You can't do that because your son was not talented enough coming out. He's not this generational prospect like a John Elway, like an Eli Manning, like a Caleb Williams, in which, once every 10 years we talk about a guy like this, and, then they have the power to say, hey, listen, I'm not going to play for your team, so don't even draft me, stuff like that. So I think from the beginning it was sort of just I'm going to use the word just ignorant is probably the best way I can say it. It's just no self-awareness. Lacking self-awareness is probably the best way I can put it. How good Shedeur is. Not that I don't think Shedeur is talented, and not that I don't think he can be a great quarterback in the NFL. There's still a possibility he can be a great quarterback in the NFL. I just think he is not as polished as, obviously Cam Ward at the top of his draft, and even some other guys in past drafts like we've seen. We saw 12 quarterbacks or 6 quarterbacks picked in the first 12 picks last year. I think all those are more polished coming out of college than Shedeur Sanders. Do I think Shedeur Sanders has a higher ceiling on some of those guys? I do. I think he might have a higher ceiling than a guy like, J.J. McCarthy or something like that. But I also don't think he is going to have, he has a lower floor. I think he could fizzle out and just not work because of the scheme he played under. And you got to realize he played under his father pretty much his entire career where, I understand you're going to cater an offense toward a quarterback, but if it's your father, you're with him 24/7. He is able to cater to your strengths, maybe a little bit more than a guy like Kevin Stefanski can. And obviously, the clip of them in the draft room is going around. Stefanski doesn't look too pumped. I don't think he's not pumped to have Shedeur in there. I just think it's a really tricky situation where, what if this guy's going to be the 3rd quarterback on your roster, the 3rd active guy, the 3rd string quarterback? These guys are going to. Shedeur's got too much of a loudmouth, too much of a big ego. His father's got too much of a big ego. Where is it going to interfere with, Kenny Pickett if he's at the 2, a Dylan Gabriel if he's at the 2, a Joe Flacco if he's at the 1? Are they going to say, hey, listen, why are we rolling out Joe Flacco there when he's 41 years old? He can't move. He's going to sit there like a statue, and his offensive line isn't going to protect him. Stuff like that can happen. I don't think teams wanted that, but the Browns, they saw the value, and I agree with it. The 144, what are you going to lose except potentially the locker room? And I mean, the Browns, they're not a very structured organization in the first place, so I'm sure that didn't cross their mind. But that's probably why a lot of organizations, such as like the Pittsburgh Steelers and even the Las Vegas Raiders, who I thought there was, especially in day three, I thought the Raiders might jump on this guy because there's a relationship with Tom Brady. Tom Brady might be able to sort of, I don't want to say talk Shedeur down, but kind of get him level headed. I think Dion probably respects Tom Brady. He's probably, the only owner in the NFL or partial owner that sort of has more prestige in the sport than Dion does. I mean, that might have helped a little bit with the relationship. It might have helped, Tom Brady basically say, hey, listen, reassuring Dion, we're going to make your kid good. And, obviously Dion's got to stay out of it. He's not his coach anymore. He will not be the coach of that team. For first year guy like Kellen Moore down in New Orleans, maybe that's why they did one with a guy like Tyler Shuck at 40 out of Louisville over Shedeur Sanders. I mean, there's so many ways you can take this to where I think Shedeur fell because of character issues. And I think just the lack of talent. I'm not making the claim that I think he's going to fail. I think there's a world where he succeeds in the NFL. I think there's a world where he fails as well. So, I mean, Cleveland, you swung. I like the pick at round 5, 144. Would I have liked my team, the Steelers, to swing at 83 or 82 whenever they picked Caleb Johnson? Absolutely. I thought that was a perfect spot to take Shedeur Sanders. Or even in the 4th round, why not go out and take a swing on him at a quarterback? And there's a lot of teams that probably felt that way, but it's just the idea of, is it going to be too much of a distraction? Is it going to be too much of an issue if you bring in Shedeur Sanders and you're potentially taking away from the starting quarterback, the guy? I mean, think about if Aaron Rodgers and Shedeur Sanders in the same locker room at Pittsburgh, what is going to happen there? It is not going to mesh well. It is going to go horribly, I would imagine. Will Shedeur, be humble? Potentially. Will Rodgers probably badmouth him? Potentially. There's so much that can go wrong. Could everything work out? Absolutely. Everything could have worked out too. I just think, the media circus going is so strong around Shedeur Sanders that I don't think teams wanted to take on that, and that's why he dropped so much. Not to mention the fact that his ego maybe got in the way in some of these draft interviews and absolutely destroyed relationships with teams. That might be why teams didn't even think about him. So Shedeur Sanders, the slide makes sense. Do we see it coming to this extent? Absolutely not. We will never see anything of this extent ever again. I guarantee it. I mean, even Isaiah Bond, people aren't going to talk about that. He went from a 2nd round pick to undrafted or 7th round or something like that. But I mean, that's not the draft side we're talking. This draft side is purely based on character issues, and I guess Isaiah Bond sort of is based on character issues. But the precedent that we are not looking for an egotistical, all about himself quarterback, whether Shedeur means to present himself as that or not. That's the way he's perceived. That's the way his dad acts. That's the way he at times acts. He acts very cocky, very arrogant, and while quarterbacks, I think, do need moxie and stuff like that, sometimes you don't want that in your organization. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are like that just don't work out, that are divas, that are proven to all this stuff that you just do not want, especially as a backup coming into the league. If he was the first overall pick like Caleb Williams, who was sort of a diva, that makes a little more sense. Hey, listen, it's a generational type prospect. We understand why he goes first overall. Shedeur Sanders is not a generational type prospect. He is a prospect that could be good in the NFL, but could also definitely realistically fail. So he goes 144 to Cleveland. I'm not going to spend too much time on it besides that. I guess I will in this next little segment I'm going to talk about, but I'm sure you guys have heard every opinion on it. My opinion is I understand why he went that low. Do I think he was the 144th best player in this draft, especially at a position like quarterback? No, I did not. I think he was one of the, I think he was a day 2 guy that made sense in the 2nd or 3rd round, but he kept dropping because of the way that he presents himself and how he did present himself throughout the process, didn't throw at the combine, all that stuff. So he hurt himself. He's got to learn some lessons. He lost millions of dollars over this. Hopefully he is able to provide in Cleveland. He's not a Steelers fan. I'm still rooting for the guy. I think he himself, if he can get out of his dad's shadow and he can be his own person, I think he can be maybe a solid player in this league. And we'll see if he gets an opportunity, because I'd imagine he does get a shot at some point this year. There's going to be too much noise for him not to at least step in and see what he can do. All right, so we're going to kind of talk about that. We're going to talk about a figure in the NFL draft space that I think is absolutely ridiculous, and I think he should be taken off TV, and this should be his last year on TV. We're going to talk about Mel Kiper. I don't usually call for people's jobs, but I think it is absolutely disrespectful what Mel Kiper did. So Mel Kiper, basically, if you guys are living under a rock, Mel Kiper basically criticized every single team for not picking Shedeur Sanders, that he was his number 1 player on his big board, because this big board apparently is gospel, he believes, and he says crazy stuff, which we'll talk about in a second. But as he continues to slide through round 1, basically all he talks about. He's not talking about the prospects getting drafted. He's talking about how teams are dumb for passing on Shedeur. Round 2, he's disgusted in his own words that Shedeur Sanders is not drafted. And then eventually, whenever round 5 comes on, he gets picked by the Cleveland Browns at 144. He's sitting there arguing with everybody on the panel and basically how it's absolutely asinine that Shedeur is even available at 144 and teams are so dumb they don't. And he said some crazy quotes, which I don't have the exact quotes right next to me, but he said something along the lines of teams don't know how to evaluate quarterbacks. We've been doing this. The proof's in the pudding. They don't know how to do it. We know how to do it. And listen, I don't think, Mel Kiper's been at this for what, 40, 50 years, something like that. I think Mel is a smart guy. I think, he'd obviously, and we'll look at both his hits and his misses, but I think he does have some good takes. I think he has some good qualities he looks for, and he does know how to evaluate players, but he doesn't know how to evaluate players like an NFL scout does. An NFL scout is evaluating players for schemes, evaluating players for, their character, all that kind of stuff. I think Mel watches the tape and he sees stuff on the tape and he's like, hey, listen. And even then, I don't know how you say Shedeur is your number 1 player on your board if you watched all the tape. Great completion percentage, but a third of those passes are behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage. So there's stuff to definitely be worried about with Shedeur Sanders, and Mel Kiper basically went on a whole tangent, basically how he's always right, he bats 1,000, which is the farthest thing from the truth, and how, these scouts don't know what they're doing. That's where I have the problem, is the fact that you're going to sit there and you're going to stand your stool like you know what you're doing and you've been perfect throughout your entire life, because he has been the farthest thing from perfect. Mel Kiper has not predicted correctly what players are going to become stars out of NFL draft. He said plenty of times, again, we'll look at it in just a second, but he said plenty of times how these players are going to be Hall of Famers and see him at the Hall of Fame induction, and they don't amount to anything. So before we do get into the negative with Mel Kiper, let's look at some of his top 10 rated quarterbacks of all time. And honestly, the list isn't horrible, so we look through it. Number 1, he's got John Elway out of Stanford. Makes complete sense in 83. The Colts trade out, and the Broncos go and get him because he didn't want to play for the Colts. Again, highest rated player, that makes complete sense. John Elway, I don't have a problem with him being number 1. I think he evaluated him correctly here. This is in 83 right here. 2012, Andrew Luck, again, obviously maybe didn't live up to the hype because just the Colts were not as prevalent. They didn't protect him. He had to retire early. But yeah, this is still a hit in my opinion. He's still evaluated. Andrew Luck was a top 5 quarterback when he was in the league at a certain time. So, that's fair. That's a good pick. Peyton Manning, 3 at Tennessee. Again, completely fair. What did he do? Win a Heisman, I believe, with Tennessee, and or maybe he didn't. Maybe that's Charles Woodson. Regardless, but he goes out. He's arguably the 2nd or 3rd best quarterback of all time. Peyton Manning, yeah, that's a hit. Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson, he has 4th of all time. It's too early to tell on Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, you're not going to put him as the number 4 quarterback of all time. You don't think he's probably a top 100 quarterback of all time yet. But, still, the talent's there. I actually believe a ton in Trevor Lawrence. I know a lot of people are hopping off the T-Law train. I still believe a ton in Trevor Lawrence. So, I'm going to still chalk us up as a Mel Kiper W. I think he's not bust. Maybe underwhelming right now, but he's not a bust. He is certainly not a bust. Jim Kelly out of Miami, again, Hall of Fame type guy. So currently he's 5 for 5. He technically, if he's sitting up there banging his gavel saying that everybody should listen to him, technically he's right up to this point. Let's get to number 6, Andre Ware out of Houston. This is probably the first miss. I don't think he was, the worst guy in the world. He wasn't the biggest bust of all time, but just didn't amount to much in the NFL. He did okay in the CFL, but just not maybe the best pick from Mel Kiper right here. I'd say there's probably 6 better quarterbacks in the NFL history than Andre Ware. It's my opinion right there. 7, he's got Drew Bledsoe. Not the worst take in the world. He wasn't the worst quarterback in the world. Obviously, everybody remembers him getting injured and Tom Brady coming in, and the rest is history. He goes bounces around in a couple teams, but he did leave the Patriots to the Super Bowl in the 90s. He got paid too. He was viewed as a really good quarterback at the time, probably a top 5, top 10 guy. So again, Mel, that's probably not a miss right there. And then we get to Ryan Leaf, which is arguably the 2nd biggest draft bust in NFL history behind Jamarcus Russell. Yeah, here's your first huge miss, Mel, in which you regard him as one of the best quarterback prospects you've ever evaluated. And, what's he do? Nothing. He does nothing in the NFL. He gets arrested. There's your first miss. There's your first huge miss, Mel. Andre Ware's a miss. This is even a bigger miss. It's a huge swing and a miss right there. Number 9, Troy Aikman out of UCLA. Makes sense. And I will give him credit for this. He was a big person on Josh Allen, was a big, Josh Allen fan coming out of college, and clearly he's proved that right. So, he's right on the Josh Allen front, and he's right on some of these picks, but this is top 10 of all time. And right in there, you got two guys who really are widely considered huge draft busts in Andre Ware and, of course, Ryan Leaf in 1998 behind Peyton Manning at number 2 overall to the San Diego Chargers at the time. So, Mel Kiper Jr., your track record, you're batting 800 right now. You're batting 800 in your top 10 with potential hits, and still the book's still out. And guys like Trevor Lawrence, if you want to say 70%, I wouldn't hate you. And besides that, everybody else probably. It was a really good player. Everybody else on this list, so Andrew Luck might be iffy for some people, but let's not forget Andrew Luck was a really good player, and his career just kind of went haywire, not the way that many people thought it would go. But now let's talk about some negatives, and this is 12 times Mel Kiper was completely wrong about NFL players. So if we look at this, he says that Julio Jones is not worth trading up for. Now, wide receiver at the time, I would have maybe agreed with this take because while he was a great player coming out of Alabama, it is tough to justify trading up for a receiver because we've seen plenty of receivers at top of drafts just not work out. But there has been some that has worked out, and Julio Jones kind of was maybe the best receiver during the 2010s. So this is a Mel Kiper miss right here, clearly. All these are going to be shout out to the Sportster too for this list. Got to give credit out, and then also 247 on the other article right there. But Julio Jones not being enough, or if he's not, his quote is not sure-handed enough to trade up for 6 overall. The Falcons go and get him. Turns out to be a pretty good draft pick, and he leads them to a Super Bowl appearance. They ultimately lose, but I'd say he's a pretty good receiver right there. David Carr right there. He compared David Carr to Troy Aikman. I don't think that's really a fair comparison, Mel Kiper. I don't think anybody would look in the annals of the history of the NFL and say, hey, listen, David Carr's kind of, perfect comp with Troy Aikman. That seems a little off right there, so that's probably pretty bad Mel Kiper miss. Now, did David Carr maybe have the tools to be a Troy Aikman type guy if he was in the right system? I think it would have been done much better than he did in those early Texans teams who literally could not keep him upright, but it's a miss right there, Mel. It's a miss. Looking at number 10, he said Keyjana Carter. He compared him to NFL legend Bo Jackson. Penn State Gary here. Love Keyjana. Just injury riddled. And, stuff like this, I won't criticize Mel Kiper for. It's tough to, especially injury-wise, because it happens all the time. We see great players just not be able to work out due to injuries. You think about the NBA, you got guys like Greg Oden. Obviously, you got deaths. Like somebody said, Len Bias. Oh, he's going to be one of the best prospects of all time. And then he dies the next day of a cocaine overdose. That also, you can't penalize somebody for saying that. So I'll give Mel Kiper the benefit of the doubt on this one. I wouldn't criticize him for Keyjana Carter. Did he have the tools to potentially be a great NFL running back? Well, guess what? He got taken number 1 overall to the Cincinnati Bengals. So yeah, he did. I won't criticize Mel Kiper for that one. I think that one is just how it went, injury riddled, stuff like that. He criticized Patriots for trading for Walker in 2007. He went undrafted in 2004. I'm gonna be honest, I looked at this. I really didn't understand what they were trying to say here. I don't know if he's saying they should go undraft. I'm not exactly sure right there. This is probably the biggest one that's been thrown around, or the second biggest one right here. Jimmy Clausen, whenever he's drafted in round 2 in the 2010 draft to the Carolina Panthers. Kiper said he would retire if Clausen didn't become a star. Well, guess what? I'm sure many of you under a certain age don't know who Jimmy Clausen is. He was a quarterback, and was he horrible? I'm not going to say horrible. He wasn't great, though. He was not great. He was not a star. I guess who's still on TV? Mel Kiper. So another big miss right here with Jimmy Clausen. Looking a little bit further, Russell Wilson, he said he's questioning his size of quarterback. Again, that's fair. I'm not going to criticize Mel for that. He's an undersized quarterback, and did he have the tools to potentially be a good quarterback? Absolutely. That's why he was drafted in the 3rd round. He was drafted in the 3rd round. It wasn't like he was a 5th, 6th round pick. But Kiper did question his size of quarterback, which I think is a fair comparison. We've seen quarterbacks of similar size just not work out in the NFL. I'm not going to harp on Kiper for this one, but if you want to say it's a bad take, technically, hindsight, it is a bad take, but I don't necessarily think that's a horrible take by Kiper. Richard Sherman being a 5th round steal by the Seahawks, he said he earned a D+ rating on Kiper's post-draft grade. What was he, a 2-way player coming out of Stanford, or 2-way for some time at Stanford, and then he transferred over to the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, Richard Sherman goes on to be the top 3 corner of the 2010s, so this is a pretty bad miss. In the time, could you have said that? Again, I always got to think about in the time. Draft day 2011. What do you think of these guys? Sherman was a good player in college. So to say that he wasn't going to translate as well in the NFL, while it does happen sometimes, I think it was probably a miss right there and probably a bad take right there from Kiper. Mike Williams being drafted 10th overall to the Detroit Lions. Kiper claimed that he'd be an NFL wide receiver and that he'd see them at his Hall of Fame induction. This is a pretty bad miss. This might be the worst miss Kiper's ever had. I personally think this is the worst miss that Kiper's had. And we'll see the top four, and there might be bigger ones, but say this guy's gonna be a guaranteed Hall of Famer, and he literally did nothing in the NFL. He played 5 NFL seasons, 4 different teams. Literally did nothing in the NFL. Nothing of recollection. You look in the history books, you will not find many Mike Williams stats right here. The original Mike Williams drafted 2005 at 10 overall to the Detroit Lions. Did he go to a hellhole in Detroit? Yes, he did go to a disastrous franchise. Then he went to the Raiders in 2007. And of course, you mix that with probably a guy we'll see on this list here in a little bit, Jamarcus Russell. But yeah, really bad take from it. I mean, when you're going this bold, you're going to say this guy's going to be a Hall of Famer. And he ends up not even being one of the top 1,000 receivers in NFL history. Not great. Aaron Curry, drafted by the Seahawks in the first round of the 2009 NFL draft. He was one of Kiper's highest rated 2009 prospects. So 2009, I'm trying to remember what year that was player-wise. I cannot recall off the top of my head. I might say a little bit down here, but I cannot see it. But Aaron Curry. How many of you guys know the name Aaron Curry? I'm going to let you know. I don't know who Aaron Curry was. I was 5 years old when he was drafted in the first round right here. So I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know who this is. And say he's one of the best players on your big board in 2009 and he doesn't work out at all. Yeah, interesting. This is the Stafford draft. I think 2009 is the Stafford draft, by the way. So to think that he's on par with Stafford is pretty absurd, I'd say. Pretty absurd. Here we go. Arguably Kiper's biggest draft bust of all time. It says right here, Jamarcus Russell being drafted first overall in 2007. I remember him being a big fan. I don't remember the time, but reading and all this stuff and looking back at the clips and stuff like that. It's a big fan of Jamarcus Russell coming out in 2007, and he sort of has character issues. He has character issues just like I think Shedeur does, and that's why teams don't want to take gambles on them. Look at Jamarcus Russell, man. 2007, first overall. You got Calvin Johnson going second overall. I think the Raiders would have much rather have had Calvin Johnson on the roster than Jamarcus Russell, I'd say. My favorite story about Jamarcus Russell is whenever they gave him a blank CD and they said, hey, go home, study this film. And he came back the next day and completely lied about it, said all this stuff on tape that there was nothing on tape. It was a blank CD. He clearly didn't even play it. That is hilarious. But Kiper being so big on this guy, again, another draft miss. Then we look a little bit farther. Ricky Stanzi, 5th round selection by the Kansas City Chiefs in 2011. Kiper compares him to Tom Brady, the GOAT. Now, Tom Brady only had 3 Super Bowls in 10 years at this point. 10 years, I believe. To say that he was going to be the next Tom Brady is interesting to me. And Tom Brady has 7 Super Bowls and how many MVPs? I mean, he's pretty good. He's a pretty good player. I don't think Ricky Stanzi got to that level. And the number 1 on this list, they have Andre Wadsworth, drafted 3rd overall by Arizona in 1998. He's ranked in their number 1 player in 1998 ahead of Peyton Manning, then the aforementioned Ryan Leaf. He was also drafted ahead of Charles Woodson in the actual draft. He was compared to Bruce Smith coming out. Oh, man, he just 8.5 career sacks. To say that he was the best player in 1998 when you have, again, top 3 quarterback of all time, Peyton Manning right there. Quite the miss by Mel Kiper. So all this to be said, and the reason I bring this stuff up is because you can't say the stuff you're saying on TV, Mel Kiper. You cannot go out there and say how teams don't know how to evaluate players. You've done it. The proof's in the pudding. Because the proof is in the pudding. You've evaluated some good players. I mean, Josh Allen's a great valuation. Having him as the number 1 player in 2018 now, will he go down as better than Lamar Jackson? We'll see. I mean, he thought Lamar Jackson should have switched to a wide receiver. Like, there's takes like that. You're like, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. And there's plenty of NFL executives and GMs and all that stuff that thought the same exact way. But basically, Kiper cannot be saying this on TV. I think it's time for him to go because I think he's lost a sense of reality and thinks that he is the guy that everybody should listen to him. And I mean, he was crashing out. He was freaking out. Kiper, I think it's time. You hang up the shoes, you hang up the boots, hang up the mic, whatever you want to call it. I think you gotta let it go after this year because especially if Shedeur ends up being a huge bust. not the best look right there. Not the best look, but I want to round out this episode of Nathan Sports Talk talking a little bit about the first round and kind of talking about what I thought about each pick. I'm sure you guys have also heard a ton about this, but again, I can sit here and talk about the NBA playoffs and who I think is going to win series and all that stuff, but pretty sure most more people care about the NFL and maybe the draft and what their teams are doing. So let me kind of just give you a breakdown of what I thought. Number one, Cam Ward. I'm really going to keep this short and sweet. I thought this was an excellent pick. I liked it from the beginning. Cam Ward was my odds-on favorite to go number one this year. I mean, I you can ask anybody around me. I've been saying, hammering the drum, Cam Ward is going to be an excellent quarterback, potentially a Heisman winner. Goes number one overall. Makes sense right there. Cam Ward, don't hate the pick at all. Two, you have the Jacksonville Jaguars trading up and getting Travis Hunter. I love the trade up. I love getting Travis Hunter, getting yourself a bona fide star. I mean, you're getting yourself somebody you're going to be able to market around this guy. You're going to be able to sell tickets around this guy. You're going to be able to sell jerseys around this guy. I mean, I love the pick right here with Travis Hunter, cornerback and receiver out of Colorado right there. Obviously, Shedeur's buddy. I thought it was an excellent pick. I mean, you gave up a lot. I get it. After the first four picks, I wasn't sold hugely on anybody. There's a couple guys I thought would be really good, but I don't know if they should have been drafted at the fifth position. We'll talk about who goes fifth and who I had them originally taking as well. But Travis Hunter, love the pick right here at number two. Number three overall, Abdul Carter. Again, I'm going to keep this one short and sweet as well. I think Abdul is a generational talent. I love him a lot coming out of Penn State. He is the best edge rusher I can remember at Penn State. That includes the likes of Micah Parsons and I didn't watch LeVar Arrington at the time, but obviously he's a big name. I think he's got a chance to be the best one out of all those number 11s right there. Love Abdul Carter out of Penn State. Fourth overall, Will Campbell. Love this pick too at the offensive tackle position. You're able to protect Drake May's blindside, be able to protect him and hopefully keep him upright, especially because you trade out Joe Milton, the backup quarterback. Really good draft selection right here out of LSU for the Patriots. Fifth overall, Mason Graham to the Browns. Again, this was whenever the part of the draft, and I was like, okay, listen, you can take your swings right here, and these guys, there's a good chance a lot of these guys are still going to be really good players. Really, Mason Graham is an absolute beast out of Michigan. I love Mason Graham. I don't think he's on the same level as an Abdul Carter, Will Campbell, Travis Hunter, or Cam Ward. I think the drop off, maybe not significant, but there's a drop off between fourth and fifth, and then everything after that. Six overall to the Raiders is Ashton Jeanty. Again, everybody had him mocked here. It makes complete sense why he went here. Love the pick for the Raiders. I think it establishes a running game in which was lacking since they lost Josh Jacobs. Love the pick at Ashton Jeanty. You're able to get a marketable star out in Las Vegas as well. Number 7, Armen Membu. I don't get it if you're the Jets. This is a combine warrior. This is a guy who impressed the combine, and I'd say half the time they work out really well, half the time they don't. I think it's going to be an example of a guy who doesn't. I'm just not a big fan of Membu right here. He did play in the SEC, so he did get a lot of good experience against pass rushers. I don't know why. I just get a weird feeling because he flew up out of nowhere. It's not going to work out well. And it seems like a very Jets pick right here, and maybe I'm completely wrong. He's able to protect Justin Fields, and their run game is able to start getting going again with Breece Hall. Maybe. I'm not holding my breath on it. I think this is a miss right here at 7. I think it's the first miss we have. Number 8's Tet McMillan out of Arizona. Love the pick right here. He was my number 1 wide receiver going into the year. He's still my number 1 receiver after the year, even after you can call it disappointment. He's still had a really good year, but disappointment I'll put in air quotes right there. I had him going 11 to the Niners, so he got picked a little bit more than I thought he would because I thought the character issues would trend over. Obviously, he says stuff like, I don't watch film, I'm a volleyball player, all this stuff that doesn't help his draft case, in which his agent and people around him should be like, hey, cut it out, don't say that. But Tedero McMillan going number 8 overall to the Carolina Panthers. I personally love the pick for the Panthers. Get yourself some Bryce Young help as well. Got nothing wrong with it. Number 9, Kelvin Banks out of Texas. I believe they did lose Teron Armstead, or not Teron Armstead. Who did they lose? I think that Ryan Ramsey. They lost someone on the offensive line this year, or maybe I'm just thinking of Teron Armstead, who retired with the Dolphins, but. Kelvin Banks, I love the pick. I'm never gonna criticize an offensive lineman unless I think they got drafted way above. Like Cole Strange a couple years ago was drafted in the back end of the first round for the Patriots when he was a third round draft grade on a lot of people. And there's a guy like that I'll talk about here in just a second. So I'm not necessarily a big fan of the Kelvin Banks, or I am a big fan of the Kelvin Banks picks. I don't think it was that much of a reach. So the Saints, that's pretty much where I'll leave it at. I think it was a good pick right there. Colston Loveland, 10 out of the Bears. This is the first real shocker to me that Tyler Warren did not go over Colston Loveland. I'm a big Colston Loveland fan. I'm just a bigger Tyler Warren fan than Colston Loveland, but I sort of get it, sort of don't. I think they could use the draft pick a little bit better if I'm the Bears. I don't think tight end was a primary position you need to address, considering you got Cole Kmet, who this might be his last year in Chicago, which is why it might be like, time to wrap up, because he will off draft in 2020. So I guess they extended him. So I guess he's probably still going to be there. But it's weird. I don't hate the pick. I don't love it though. So I'm indifferent about the Colston Loveland pick. Michael Williams out of Georgia for the Niners. Love this pick right here. Pair him across with Nick Bosa. Get that pass rush back to what they wanted to be. You obviously lose a couple of pass rushers. Chase Young, you lost last year, which that kind of made that pass rush significantly better. You saw clearly they just struggled last year. I really think the Niners are a little bit away from competing. I don't trust that team enough. I think they lost too much. And I think they're just not trending in the right direction. But Michael Williams is still a guy in which he's going to be a difference maker day one, and I think it's an excellent draft pick. This is the reach I was talking about with offensive lineman Tyler Booker. I had him as a back end of the first round, early second round guy right here, offensive guard out of Alabama. Do I think you could have slid back and got him? I do think you could have. However, he was the best offensive guard in the draft, so maybe he does go a little bit higher. So, I mean, do I like the player? Yes, I like the player a lot. I think he's going to translate well to the NFL. You obviously got to replace Zach Martin, which you lose a Hall of Fame offensive guard right there in Dallas. But do I think you potentially reached a little bit? You could have got a little bit value and traded back to get him. I do think that as well. So that's why I'm not maybe the over the moon about Tyler Booker, but I still don't think it was a bad pick. I just think you could have slid back a little bit and got him. But maybe I'm completely overreacting and the team would have slid up and drafted him as well because he interviewed well or people just weren't onto him enough. So number 13 is Kenneth Grant. I thought this was a reach for the Dolphins right here. First rounds where I see the reaches, like, a guy 10 spots off in which I was expecting him to go or what I evaluated him at. And again, I'm not like Mel Kiper. I'm not beating on the drum saying that I know how to evaluate talent. I don't. There's a reason I'm sitting here in a room, not in an NFL office, because I don't know how to evaluate talent. I'm giving you my opinions and all that stuff. I thought Kenneth Grant was a 20 to 25 type guy, and he went 13 overall, in which I thought the Dolphins could have utilized a lot more weapons, like a guy like Tyler Warren went 14, which we'll talk about in a second. But do I think Kenneth Grant's a bad player? No. Do I think he was overdrafted? Yes, which is why I'm not maybe over the moon with the Dolphins about picking him. Number 14 is Tyler Warren out of Penn State, tight end. Love the pick right here. I had him as a top 10 guy. I think he has the lowest floor on this draft. I think he's going to be a good player no matter what. I do not think he's going to fail. I do not think he's anything like Kyle Pitts, in which, did I say coming out that Kyle Pitts is going to be a great player? I did. And is Kyle Pitts a great player? You can argue he's not a great tight end. He's an average tight end. But listen, I watched every game of Tyler Warren's career as a Penn State fan. I love that dude. This is no bias. I think he is a dog. I think he is a Swiss Army knife that you would want on your team, and a guy like Shane Steichen's going to be able to draw up some nice plays, and you're also going to help out with, Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, whoever your quarterback might be, as a safety option. I did have Colts going with the tight end, but again, I thought Colston Loveland would be there, and Tyler Warren would also be gone by that point. Number 15 overall, Jalen Walker out of Georgia to the Atlanta Falcons. Love this pick right here. Falcons historically draft offense the last couple of drafts. You think about, you go back, they got Penix, Bijan, just going back, Penix in 24, Bijan in 23, Drake London in 22, Kyle Pitts in 21. In 20, they might also draft an offensive guy. I just cannot remember off the top of my head. But, this is a fabulous pick. I love the pick, Jalen Walker. He was... I think I had him going Mason Graham and Travis Hunter. I guess Travis Hunter's still a guy. Mason Graham I had higher, but besides those guys, I think I had him as my second best true defense player on my board after Mason Graham. So I love the pick of 15. I think you get great value right there. I have nothing to complain about right there. Number 16, Walter Nolan, defense tackle out of Ole Miss for the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals, they need a lot of help. I think they're average at a lot of spots. So if you can try to draft a dog and a guy who you think is going to be an absolute menace in 16, and it's defense tackle Ole Miss. I believe he transferred into Ole Miss after being at Texas A&M or Texas. the previous years. So I like the pick right here. I got nothing else really to say. Shedeur Sanders, edge out of Texas A&M for the Bengals. I love this pick right here. Kind of where I expected him to go around was this area. So not really too much of a reach in my opinion, but you're probably replacing Trey Hendrickson. It's probably what this is for, and it's not fair on Shedeur because he's going to have those expectations that he's going to be the sack king, and is he probably going to be the sack king statistically and probability? Probably not, but going to be a really good edge rusher. Yeah, it could be a really good edge rusher. So Shedeur Sanders, I love the pick at 17. Greg Zabel right here, offensive guard out of North Dakota State. I thought this was a reach, but again, if you need offensive line, you need to get him. You need to get him. It's kind of the same thing I'm saying about the Cowboys, where I think there's a chance he could have been there a little bit later in the draft or later in the first round. But if you want to really secure, your pick and you want to get him, go out and get him. I wouldn't have taken him this high, but Greg Zabel, he's good. He's a good kid. I believe he also was a lefty pitcher in high school. Fun fact about him. So I threw like 90 miles an hour. 19, Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. Again, this is something where I think he probably killed it in interviews and teams loved him. I don't get why the Buccaneers went with him because they already have 3 really good receivers in Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Jalen McMillan. So you're getting a 4th guy. Do you really need him? Could it be used better value right here? Whether you go with a corner, you go with an offensive tackle, something like that. Yes, you can probably use a player at a better position, but I think he's going to be a stud in the NFL. You think about it, he's really been overshadowed by Marvin Harrison. I talk about think about all the guys that have been there since he's been there. Marvin Harrison, Jeremiah Smith, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, all these players, JSN. You got all these players who are first-round picks or future first-round picks or second-round picks that are just overshadowed him. And, he gets the flowers he deserves as he's a great run blocker. He's a great route runner. He can catch the ball and get open in space and move. So Emeka Egbuka at 19. I like the pick right there out of the Buccaneers. 20, we got Jahdae Barron right here out of Texas corner. Love the pick right here. I think that Omarion Hampton would have been the smarter pick for the Broncos here. Give your boy Bo Nix, your young quarterback, a little bit more help. But again, this is where it's not a bad pick at all. I mean, pair it up with a secondary who could use a little bit of help. Jahdae Barron, I like the pick. Again, I think I had him going a little bit earlier, so sort of a steal in my eyes, a steal. 21, Derek Harmon out of Oregon to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah, this feels like a Steelers guy. This feels like a Steelers guy in which he is going to be a menace in the front 7 for a long time as a Steeler, a Cam Hayward type comp. He models game after Cam Hayward. Guess who he's playing alongside Cam Hayward's final years? Cam Hayward. I guess Cam Hayward's playing besides Derek Harmon in his final years. So love the pick at 21. 22, Omarion Hampton for the Los Angeles Chargers. You go out and you sign, what's his name? Najee Harris, and you take Omarion Hampton. Kind of a head scratcher now. Is it because he was too talented to pass up on at 22? Maybe that was the thought process behind Jim Harbaugh, and he wants to run the ball a ton, take a little bit less pressure off Herbert. That might be the thought process, but this was a questionable pick for me as well. Not necessarily the biggest fan of Omarion Hampton at 22. Matthew Golden at 23 out of Texas. Thought this was really good value. One of my best receivers, I thought, coming out of the draft. He was number 2 on my board, I believe, after Ted McMillan. Gets a nice pop from the Packers faithful there in Green Bay during the draft night. Good pick right here. Love the pick right there out of Texas right there. We got Donovan Jackson, offensive guard out of Ohio State. For the Vikings, a guy who got, I believe it's the guy, no, Josh Simmons was the guy I believe got injured, but Donovan Jackson was stud up front for the Buckeyes. Interior offensive lineman helped. They got absolutely demolished by the Rams pass rushing in the postseason, so it makes sense you want to address that situation. Kevin O'Connell, keep JJ McCarthy upright. Good pick right here, 24. I like it. 25, Jackson Dart, quarterback, Ole Miss to the New York Giants as they trade back into the first round. It's the right pick. It's the right pick, man. You got to get quarterback in there to help save your job. They had so many ties to Ole Miss that it felt like it was going to be him over Shedeur. I thought they were going to go him over Shedeur, and that is exactly the case. I think Jackson Dart will be potentially a really good player in the NFL. I loved Jackson Dart, especially 2 years ago. Last year he disappointed a little bit, but I still think he's got a lot of talent. I still trust him a lot, and I hope that he does succeed in Newark, New York, because they need themselves a quarterback because Daniel Jones Did not work out. 26, James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. I love the value right here. Was a top 5 to 10 guy coming into the year. Slid a little bit. Some guys got a little more hype. Falcons trade back in yet another piece for that defensive side of the ball, in which they desperately need. They need to help build the defense a little bit more, because that offense could score some points, but you got to be able to stop a nosebleed as well. So James Pierce Jr. should get some pressure alongside their other pick in the first round with Jalen Walker out of Georgia. 27, Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia, to the Baltimore Ravens. As Steelers fans, this guy feels like he's going to be a pain in the side for the Steelers for a long time, because he is a dog. Malachi Starks, is a absolute beast out of Georgia. Great safety, pairing with Kyle Hamilton. What could go wrong there in the Baltimore? 28, Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. Completely made sense going defense right here, because your defense shot you in the foot last year. Granted, did they get the most unlucky you could possibly get by having everybody on their team get injured? Absolutely, but Tyleik Williams was a very, very good player at Ohio State. Should be a very good player in the NFL, and can definitely help that defense line with, what's his name? The Malik Williams or something like that, I believe, is the defense tackle's name in Detroit right there. Pair of those two side by side. Should be good. We got Josh Connolly Jr., offensive tackle out of Oregon. Put him on the other side of Laramie Tunsil right here. Keep Jane Daniels upright. That's pretty much as much as I got to say about the pick. I like it. I don't hate it. Was it a little bit of a reach? You could say potentially, but offensive linemen are necessities, so get him there at 29. Probably a good pick. 30, Maxwell Hairston, Kentucky corner for the Bills. Like this pick as well. They just have not been able to stop. It feels like passing quarterbacks for a while. You can't, stop a guy like Patrick Mahomes. Can't stop Lamar Jackson to some extent. You did technically stop him on the last play because of Mark Andrews' drop, but Maxwell Hairston, super fast, super speedy. Love the pick right here out of Kentucky, and I think he's just a great locker room character guy. If you guys saw the clips of him when players were getting drafted, dapping them up, shaking their hands, I love it. I think Maxwell Hairston's going to be an absolute dog at the next level with the Buffalo Bills, and compare him with some of his other young secondary pieces. Jihad Campbell out of Alabama for the Eagles at 31. This feels like an Eagles pick in which he's going to turn out to be an absolute demon alongside who? Nolan Smith, Zach Bond, all these linebackers they got. Jihad Campbell's going to fit right in. They know how to draft well. I'm not questioning it. I love Jihad Campbell. He had that shoulder issue, which kind of maybe hurt him a little bit, but he'll be fine by next year. I like the pick a lot out of Alabama. Then to wrap it up, 32 with the Kansas City Chiefs, in which them and the Eagles trade right there. But Josh Simmons, offensive tackle, Ohio State. This is the kid that got injured. Was going to be a unanimous All-American, potentially win awards on the offensive line, and get him at 32. I love Josh Simmons. I think Josh Simmons is going to be a great player, and that's clearly the issue with the Chiefs in Super Bowl, is they cannot keep Patrick Mahomes upright and stop that pass rush. So how do you combat that, and how do you get better at it? You draft players and you sign players. You trade away Joe Thuney, which didn't help, but draft Josh Simmons at 32, which might help. So first round draft right there is a little bit of analysis. I think a lot of teams did really well. I don't think there was really any horrible picks besides, I didn't like Omarion Hampton, the Chargers, just because of how they already are set up with the running backs. Then I thought, Tyler Booker was a little bit of a reach. But besides that, I like mostly everybody. Again, I don't get Tyler Warren over Colston Loveland, but I bet you they're both going to be really good players. And, maybe I'm going to look stupid by saying I think Tyler Warren's going to be a better player than Colston Loveland, but I think both are going to succeed at the next level. I had them both highly rated, and I'm sure your boy Mel Kiper did too. So, okay, enough with the Mel Kiper sign. I got to stop right here. But that wraps up episode 2 of Nathan Sports Talk. Hopefully you guys enjoyed me kind of breaking down the NFL draft, a little bit of Mel Kiper talk, and then, of course, to talk of the draft, Shedeur Sanders. We'll see what's coming down the pipeline next week. I guess I can also mention real quick the prank call on Shedeur Sanders, because it came out today. I'm recording this on a Wednesday. It came out today that I believe Falcons were fined $250K and Jeff Ulbrich was fined $100K. Maybe a little bit harsh. I think it maybe should be more on the kid and Ulbrich himself, because it's all on the kid. It was just a sticky situation. Horrible video. Really, really immature by the kid right there, calling Shedeur on his draft day. Really not funny at all. Just kind of a BS, jerk type move. But that did come out as well today. So we'll see what information and news comes out by the time we talk next Thursday. Nathan Sports Talk. Appreciate you guys hanging out as always, and take care.